What's up, y'all? What's going on? This Greg. What Greg said it, back with another one. We in this off season. We had a big splash last week. Been kind of quiet this week. Maybe it's going to heat up later in the week. But everybody's feeling really good. And with the Buffaloes, Buff Nation, I really haven't even heard a lot about the Bowls and the playoff. But we definitely been talking about the Buffs. And everybody's excited about what's going on. And excited about what's coming next, especially with the defensive side. So we just waiting patiently. Maybe we'll have a big splash later in the week. I don't know if they're holding back. I don't know if people haven't made decisions. We do know we had a decommit from Mr. Aaron Butler. You say he just want to do something different. Some people just in a little denial. Like, I don't know. Maybe we still have a chance. Like, everybody we lose, like, we still have a chance, I don't know. I think the receiver room has depth enough. You don't want to have too much depth. We're trying to figure out what to use. Just use what you got and just keep it moving. I think you got enough pieces, bar, injury or whatever, to fill in. Just let them boys develop what we got. That was there last year. Plenty of depth. So don't really need much there. I think the running back room is pretty solid. You need to master using what we have there. And maybe get one or two more big tight ends to help with that blocking and route running case low. But I think the offense is pretty solid. Defense is what's next. And I'm thinking, this kind of like you do like a little quiz or middle assessment. What do you all think we are so far compared to last year? Now, disclaimer, I feel like last year, this is me. Y'all don't heard me 100 times. I feel like last year is a little deceiving. Yeah, the offensive played, the line played garbage, some misuse. Some misuse of the talent, the weapons that we had. But defense also didn't take advantage of opportunities. They had some hot moments, some turnovers, some big plays. I mean, pretty consistent throughout most of the year. Kept us really in the game, even though they would turn around and give up, big plays. They made big plays. We would like to see more pressure on the quarterback, definitely. And the DBs definitely need to get in the film room and on the field. As far as, dealing with the drag routes and things of that nature, slants. But, and we don't even get into linebackers. We're not even going to get into that. We just need a full overload. But with all of that understood, I still feel like that wasn't a 4 in the 18. I don't feel like it represents the talent. Matter of fact, the talent level that we had is really what overcome a lot of the deficiencies. And it didn't overcome the deficiencies in the referees, no matter what the theory is Pac-12 or is ESPN versus Fox or whatever. Different things we hear in different places. I've heard several. But the fact still remains, those boys got robbed. And they didn't just get robbed in the Utah game. It just made it very obvious what's been going on. They're sipping points and yards off one of them at all the wrong times, pulling plays back. And help another team. That existed. There's no doubt about it. You have to be a pure hater not to see that. But at the same time, they needed to do all that to get them to 4 and 8. So if you really look at it, mistakes, cheating, you can't take it back. But the fact remains, that team was better than 4 and 8. To the point where at least 5 of those games was decided by 8 or less. And if you want to add one more, say 6, was 10 and less. So they were always in the game. So when you're that close, either some calls that should have went your way hurt you, or some calls that went against you hurt you. Because it's just that, one touchdown is a thin margin. No matter how the game started off, no matter if you started off blowing them away or whether you started off being blown away, those critical calls. For example, like I remember when Kamani caught the interception when Colorado was making a run against USC. And then, Mario Miller showed out on the offensive side, and the defense just kind of stepped up in that second half And the starters were in now. People try to say that the reserves was in. They really took their foot off the gas, but the starters were in now on both sides. And Colorado was making a run on them. And Caleb Williams threw that interception on the sideline, and Ward jumped up, bang bang play. They called pass interference, and that game was over because if he had got that and the way the offense was moving and the momentum, Colorado had time to score that one last touchdown. But when they took that play back and got that penalty, it just drained the rest of the clock to the point where you don't have enough time to come back at the end. And that's just an example of when you call these pass interference and personal fouls, when the defense finally make a stop or when they get a turnover and you say, oh, penalty. And you're like, that's a questionable penalty. Or, you know, when the offense make a big run, oh, holding, personal foul, something. Right when you need it the most. That's a scary thing. And that's scary even going forward. Hopefully, you know, you don't see that kind of blatant thing that heavily sides on one team to the point where the stats show this team double, triple penalties more than everybody they played. Like, very few teams will, you know, usually your penalties are, you say that undisciplined. I don't know. But I digress. I think that this team was much better than 4-8. I think they should have won at least 7 games. At least. Just off the talent and what they were able to put on the field. I think those 5 games, they still could have won, but with the mistakes they lost. But definitely not a 4. They were better than the 4-18. That's my belief. And it's a fact because with all their problems, they were losing by 8 points or less most of the time, outside of 2 blowouts. That's it. So that's my belief. But if you were to look at where they're going, you have to factor that in because a lot of people say, well, they did 4-8 this year, so they should win 7 games next year, 8 games. That's not how you do that. It's just like looking at a team who say, hey, they beat this team, so we should beat them. The matchup is different. I would like to say, I feel like that Colorado, based off the talent they have and the conference they'll be playing in, and the talent, you know, that they bring back, the measure should be no less than 10 games. If I had to give them a margin of error, I don't really see them should lose 4 games unless something just really fall apart. Like, you give them room for 1 or 2 teams to catch them. But to give them 4 or 5 games, that's my measurement. I can't say because they went 4-8 this year with all those close games and strange calls that it'll be good for them to go 7-5 next year, especially in the Big Ten. I just don't see them losing 5 games in the Big 12, excuse me. If you lose 5 games in the Big 12, it would be, to me, the equivalent of this year because it's like, what 5 teams do you really is really on your level that you really feel like you should lose to? How can you justify losing 5 games in the Big 12 unless you really have, you know, some debacles? Like, you really had something go wrong. Who in the Big 12 should beat you? 5. Like, you could say that this year because you had multiple Heisman candidates, quality quarterbacks. And that's what you could base off of, like, where they may be better, but they got to go against Bo Nix. They got to go against, you know, Cam Ward, you know, Penix. You had even down in Rising, down in Utah. You had all of these different teams where you can say, but they have that guy. And you have to factor that in. Where do you factor that in the Big 12? I don't know no big quarterbacks in the Big 12 that you could justify putting their quarterback up against Shedeur and Shedeur losing, especially with a line. Even if it has to be a shootout, I don't see how you can justify that. The only way you can justify that is you're looking at last year in a pretty much unique juggernaut type of conference this year. Is rare for this type of conference to have that kind of competition. And they pretty much beat each other all the way around. It was just a unique situation. Because You know, you go up against a good quarterback, he can pretty much beat you by himself because he's that dynamic. He can get the ball to the playmakers. He can make plays. You've seen that with Caleb Williams all day. He made USC look better, SC look better because of crazy throws he would throw, sidearm, underarm, scrambling, extending the plays. That comes with that quarterback. But when you just got an average quarterback, you really put the pressure on the rest of your team to be great. And then you really have to measure talent for talent against the Colorado. And I don't think you can do that because I don't think you're going to have the receivers and the skill players that they have. Your quarterback can't bail you out of that. What do you all think? Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Baylor. Outside of their names, what talent do they have that you think this roster that's coming up, the Travis Hunters, Jimmy Horn, Shador, Omari Miller, that you feel can match up against the mature, more developed version of them with time to throw the ball, with a running game, with Alton McCaskill, healthy, big running back behind a big line. Houston, Cincinnati, UCF. How do you justify them losing 5 games? And if they lose 5 games against those teams in that conference, I don't see how you can say that's an upgrade when you compare it to the competition that they just did 4-8 against. It's not just the record. It's who you're going against and it's what you have that will determine if that's good. To me, a 4-8 in the Pac-12 this year and a 7-5 next year in the Big 12, darn near the same. Expectations going to be a lot higher. But that's just me, y'all. Tell me what y'all think. Greg said it. Make sure y'all like, share, subscribe. Make sure y'all come back for more talk like this. And I'll talk to y'all soon.